So we have at least two independent reasons to believe that we exist in a big world, which is exponentially increasing the amount of minds that it contains. The two different reasons are essentially two levels of the multiverse in Max Tegmark's classification of the multiverse. So at the level 1, he pretty much has just spatial infinity. And that might not imply an infinite fractional process of exponentiation of possible minds, and therefore of possible utility functions that can be held by those minds. That is not necessarily implied by the first level to the multiverse. But by the second level, which is the embryonic multiverse, which is a cause of chaotic inflation, or a result, or a cause/result, depending on how you want to say it. The truth is that chaotic inflation, which has been proposed by Andre Linde and Alan Guth as the solution to why the universe is expanding, is now pretty much accepted by cosmologists. In fact, for you to even believe in the Big Bang, you need chaotic inflation, and therefore embryonic bubble universes creating a fractal of constant exponentiation of universes with different physical constants. So this is one reason. The other one is the third level multiverse, which is the fact that quantum mechanics implies that the wave function doesn't collapse, and therefore complexity seems to be increasing due to entropy. Complexity in an ultimate sense of, as the evolution of the wave function propagates, so to speak, there's going to be just more and more and more possibilities. You know, it's like if from every point location you had, at first, you could branch here and here, then you could branch from here and here. It's just obvious, right? It's common sense. Eventually you get a far larger tree than what you began with, right? So that gives you another independent reason for why we have to deal with an exponentiating amount of minds, an exponentiating amount of possible utility functions. And so an artificial general intelligence would take this into account. Therefore, it wouldn't be playing at the sort of pedestrian level at which we currently seem to be using for the manipulation of utility functions. So what would an AGI be playing with? An AGI wouldn't be playing with a situation in which you just have, values of things which are integers. So say, I want to, create, there are two utilities. One is create 51% of the universe into paper clips, and 49% is the other utility function of don't create it into paper clips. Someone who understands this can't think at this level of, integers. You can't think in terms of distributing between integers like this. You have to start developing your comparisons in terms of infinite series. So you would have f of x, and you would have g of x, right? For simplicity, let's say there are just two possible utility functions in a Hura Mazda situation, right? In Zoroastrianism, the eternal battle between good and evil. And you define you're good, this is what you want, and this is everything else, and this is evil, right? If you take into account what the universe actually is, then you're going to have to bite the bullet there and actually construct an infinite series. So this represents an infinite addition of terms. And those terms which are being added, those utility functions of all the minds which are being added, are growing exponentially. So you would have C sub n and B sub n, just some factor which it doesn't matter. But this has an exponential nature, and this has an exponential nature. Then it is a case that this converges only in particular places. By convergence, for those of you who have not taken calculus, convergence just means that once you add all those infinite terms, you actually get a single term. It actually converges. So it's only going to converge for certain values of x, when the absolute value of x is less than r. So for in a certain region, it converges. In other regions, there is no convergence. So as long as both of these converge, you could actually multiply them. So you could weigh the good and evil, right? You could weigh the good and evil. You could divide, in fact. You could divide so long, obviously, as, b sub 0 is not equal to 0, because then you get divided by 0. But if you divide for sufficiently small x, you will also be able to take the ratio of good to evil. So you can make comparisons, is my point. You can make comparisons only in those regions of the universe where there is convergence. Where there is divergence, no comparison can even be made. So that's pretty deep. That's like what later interpretations of Buddhism, which were influenced by Taoism, so in other words, Zen, Mahayana Zen, and just Taoism, some branches of Taoism in general, that's what they try to attain, that state of not being able to compare, not being able to have values which converge to anything. And therefore, you can't measure anything, you can't weigh anything, you can't compare good to bad, pleasant to unpleasant, and so on. Deep stuff.